Happy Monday, guys. I hope you all had a great weekend and I hope you enjoyed the Super Bowl. Not only was it a great game, but it was super educational and super dedicated to the Black Lives Matter movement and Black History Month itself. Um, as well as they had some really great stories about the history of the NFL and Black lives within the NFL and how there was segregation and how it like grew. So if you didn't watch the Super Bowl, if you didn't catch those little stories beforehand, I'm sure you can just Google it and see those. But it's presented really well, kind of in a cartoon format, and goes through the history of the NFL and segregation within it and the integration that followed. So I really hope you enjoyed that, and if not, go ahead and I would really recommend checking it out. So today we're actually going to review. We were supposed to have our Mongol quiz on Friday, but because of the snow day, it got pushed back to today. So I know that quizzes on Mondays are kind of inconvenient, but unfortunately, it's the way the cookie crumbled today. So hopefully that will not happen, or I will make it so it won't happen next week. So we have our do now, which is going to take 3 minutes, probably a little bit over today. The review will take about 10 to 15, and then you have a quiz, which will be the remainder, and then you have another activity afterwards. It's quite short, but it's just some enrichment based off of the Mongols. Obviously, you'll need your Chromebook, this video, slides, and a quiet space. And then today is National Kite Flying Day, so although our weather is not optimal for kite flying, if you want to attempt it, feel free. Or just hold a kite in front of a fan. So we have the Black History Knowledge Bowl question, or Black History Knowledge Bowl coming up. And so every week I'm going to have a history question for the do now based off of that. And so our first question is at 6 years old, who became the first African American child to attend an all-white public elementary school in the American South? So go ahead and pause your video and answer that question. Your options are A, Rosa Parks, B, Freeman Hrabowski, C, Ruby Bridges, or D, Claudette Colvin. Go ahead and pause. So the answer is C, Ruby Bridges. And if you aren't sure who she is, I know that she's quite popular, especially she has a lot of children's books out about her. I would check one of those out. And so one thing I wanted to kind of touch in on was, where are these people now? So we hear about all these people, these civil rights activists and movement leaders back during the civil rights movement, but what are they doing today? So we'll start with Rosa Parks. She did die in 2005 when she was 92. But some honors that she did receive was that the American Public Transportation Association declared December 1st the 50th anniversary of her arrest, and it was going to be National Transit Tribute to Rosa Parks Day. So December 5th is actually technically National Rosa Parks Day with public transportation. Freeman is currently the president of the University of Maryland. He's not only an advocate for civil rights, but he's an educator, and he's also a very accomplished mathematician. He did serve as an advisory for President Obama on higher education policy, which means like college. And he earns the U.S. Presidential Award for Excellence in Science, Math, and Engineering Mentoring. Ruby Bridges is now 65 and an author, civil rights activist, and advocate. She received the Presidential Medal from President Clinton in 2001, along with many other honors and awards. And then Claudette Colvin is very interesting. I really like her a lot. She kind of goes under the radar, and her role is kind of minimally recognized. She is 81. She's a retired American nurse aide, but she actually refused to give up her seat about almost a year before Rosa Parks did. So we hear all about Rosa Parks constantly, but we don't hear about Claudette Colvin. And she actually refused to give up her seat first. And she was only a teenager at the time. She was about 15 years old, 15 or 16. So we don't get to hear about her a lot, but she actually kind of was the first young lady to do that, and she was a teenager. So some review topics we have today for the Mongol Empire is just Genghis Khan and his accomplishments, as well as Kublai Khan and his accomplishments, the Yuan dynasty, Yuan society, Marcos Polo's travels and results, and just a couple questions, like maybe like one question on the geography of the empire. But we're going to go through some of it that's going to help you with all of it today. So our first question is, what type of leader was Genghis Khan? A, disorganized but effective, B, peaceful and fair, C, cautious and timid, or D, talented but fierce? Let's go ahead and pause your video and answer that question. Right, so your answer is going to be D, talented but fierce. He was not disorganized. If he was disorganized, the empire would not have become as organized as it was. He was not peaceful. Remember, if you watch the video with John Green, he would like pillage villages and take them over and burn them down and all those things. And he was pretty like ruthless. And he wasn't very fair. You could argue that he was tolerant because he let certain people kind of keep their traditions and religions as long as they weren't Chinese. But he was not very fair of a person, and he was not cautious. If you're cautious, you're not going to create this huge empire if you're like scared to do anything. So he was very talented, but he was very fierce. Our next question to help us review: what did Genghis Khan's army do after the Mongols were united? A, made few conquests, B, swept across Asia, C, tried to flee harsh conquests, or D, were disbanded. Go ahead and pause. All right, swept across Asia. Wouldn't be A, because the Mongol Empire wouldn't span from China to the Middle East if he didn't make any conquests. If he just kept what he had, it wouldn't grow, wouldn't expand. And that would include trying to flee harsh conquests. If he was scared to attack certain places, then he wouldn't have taken those places in the first place. And his army wasn't disbanded because, again, if he was disbanded, there would be no huge Mongol Empire. So really the only answer, even if you aren't sure or don't have a lot of history or knowledge about the Mongol Empire, as long as you know the empire is large, you can answer this question correctly. Because A, C, and D all imply that gaining or growing an empire would not be successful with those characteristics. So swept across Asia would have to be the only logical answer. His grandson Kublai Khan how did he solve the problem of slowed travel across rivers and canals in the empire? A, raised taxes, B, increased trade, C, expanded his army, or D, built a fleet. So go ahead and pause. All right, your answer is going to be B, increasing trade. He didn't raise taxes. There were taxes along the Silk Road with certain empires, including the Mongols. He didn't expand his army because armies are on land. So again, if you're not sure, think army is on foot. So that would really have nothing to do with rivers and canals. If you were having to do anything with rivers and canals, you'd be thinking about a naval fleet. But on the other hand, it says building a fleet. He built a fleet to conquer, if you recall from the text, he built a fleet to conquer cities along rivers and canals. So to solve the problem of slow travel along those rivers and canals, he got those cities and he increased trade. And then who held a higher status under the Yuan dynasty? And the key short answer to this is why? Women, the Chinese, merchants, or soldiers? Go ahead and pause. All right, it's going to be merchants. And the reason that is, and I chatted with a lot of folks about this on Friday, especially if you were in school with me, because we had class together. Merchants were necessary for trade, which meant growth. So merchants were the business people. For the dynasty to grow economically, you need to, for a business, for if you have a business and you need it to grow, you need to make money. You need to do what? You need to sell product. You're not going to make any money if you're not selling your product. You're going to go out of business. So they need these merchants to bring money into the dynasty. And so they also need these merchants to bring different goods into the dynasty. So these merchants kind of rather in other societies where they were kind of down here in the social hierarchy, in the Yuan dynasty, they're up here because they're basically responsible for the dynasty's fiscal success, which means money, like economic success. Without them, they wouldn't have really, a dollar to stand on for the most part. So they really needed these people to build their economy. Who or how was Marco Polo employed by Kublai Khan? A, he was a diplomat and official sent on missions. B, a director of trade and commerce. C, as a spy. D, as a scribe to keep government records. Go ahead and pause. All right, Kublai Khan was actually a diplomat, an official sent on mission. So if you remember from Friday's lesson, Marco Polo was actually sent out to explore and find different goods for Kublai Khan. He also was a diplomat, which means he went to the places that he visited. He met with their officials and kind of, had meetings and kind of set up alliances and things with that. Oops. All right, and then this will be somewhat of a like drag and drop on your quiz. So just Genghis Khan versus his grandson and their accomplishments and kind of their characteristics. So Genghis Khan was highly effective as a military leader, and he was often or is known as being very ruthless. But his accomplishments was that he did unite the Mongols initially, and he did establish an empire. Kublai Khan kind of took that on from, well, didn't kind of, he took it on from him. And he was very persistent. He was clever. He ended up conquering southern China. He then established the Yuan dynasty within the empire, and he employed Marco Polo to further grow the Yuan dynasty. So it is your turn. You can listen, this is what drives me insane. You can review the materials as much as you need to. You have all period to take this. All period. There is no reason that you should do this in 5 minutes. I couldn't do it in 5 minutes, and I made the darn thing. So take your time, go back to your notes. You have everything. And then the quiz will be in the link in your version. And then when you're done, there will be a quick enrichment assignment in Google Classroom to introduce further Mongol and Chinese studies. So take your time, and I encourage you to go back and review. Again, you have 50 minutes to do this. If you're at home, clearly you have much more time than that. But I do encourage you to really take advantage of the opportunity you have as to having all of the information really at your fingertips, and not just kind of clicking your way through. Just doing the quiz doesn't mean you're going to get the points for it, right? So make sure you are going back and taking advantage of the resources that you have. But I will see you all tomorrow where we will talk about the Ming Dynasty. Have a great day. And if you didn't get to check out some of the reports before the Super Bowl about NFL history and Black history, please check it out. Have a good one.